We are here today because the Prime Minister has already invoked the Emergencies Act. What we're debating in this House is whether or not we believe that his invocation of the Act should be endorsed or revoked. In order for this House to endorse the invocation of the Emergencies Act, two very high thresholds need to be met. The government at the time that this legislation was introduced set a very high bar on purpose, because the Emergencies Act is like a fire alarm that can only be activated when the glass has been broken. And we should only allow the glass to be broken when it is justified. The Emergencies Act is only to be used when there are threats to the security of Canada that are so serious that they constitute a national emergency and cannot be addressed using any of the laws or tools that are currently on the books. This invocation fails on all counts. There are no threats to the security of the country. There is a noisy protest happening around Parliament Hill, but it's not impeding the ability of Parliament to function, as we can see clearly today. The House continues to sit. MPs walk through the protests every day. The Prime Minister holds press conferences mere steps from where the truckers have set up their rigs and their signs. This protest isn't even a threat to the continued security of the House of Commons, let alone the security of Canada. It's also not a national emergency. The protest stretches over a few city blocks of downtown Ottawa. Has it been disruptive? Yes, it has. Should the trucks move on or be moved at this time? Yes, they should. Does the Emergencies Act need to be invoked to allow that to happen? Absolutely not. There are more than enough powers granted to enforcement agencies to allow them to manage the situation and resolve it peacefully. We've seen this at the border in Coutts, at the Ambassador Bridge, in Surrey, and at Emerson. All of those incidents were peacefully resolved using existing police and government powers. The predecessor to this act, the War Measures Act, was only invoked during World War I, World War II, and during the FLQ crisis. These are seminal moments in Canadian history. What we're seeing right now in Ottawa does not even come close to the level required to take this draconian response. Conservatives will oppose this overreach. The Bloc Québécois has indicated that they will oppose this overreach. Liberal MPs will do what the Prime Minister tells them to do, as they always have and always will. So it comes down to the votes of the NDP to determine whether or not this House will endorse using the Emergencies Act to suspend the civil rights and civil liberties of whomever this Prime Minister deems to be a designated person engaging in an illegal protest. In 1970, when Pierre Elliott Trudeau used the War Measures Act to send in the army and suspend the civil liberties of Canadians, the NDP stood in opposition to it. The vote was 190 MPs in favor and only 16 against. NDP leader Tommy Douglas, who I am quite sure I have never quoted before, said, "This is overkill on a gargantuan scale," calling the emergency legislation an act of panic. He went on to compare the invocation of the War Measures Act to using a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. The exact same quotes could and should be used to describe this Prime Minister's gross overreach by using the Emergencies Act today. Numerous former NDP MPs have weighed in disbelief at what their party is prepared to endorse, recognizing the dangerous precedent that this will set for future governments to crack down on their own citizens protesting the direction of a future government. But today's NDP is joining the Liberals in endorsing the use of legislation that takes away the rights of Canadians who the government disagrees with. Today's NDP is willing to sacrifice their own principles to provide comfort to a Liberal Prime Minister who has none. The order attached to this invocation is far-reaching. Canadians who've been involved in completely legal and legitimate protests that have taken place over the last weeks could be retroactively caught up in this dragnet. Canadians who donated small amounts of their own money or who gave home-cooked meals to truckers on their way to Ottawa could be caught up in this overreach. And what does the Prime Minister say to those who've raised those concerns? Just trust me. Give me the benefit of the doubt. Well, trust is earned, and this Prime Minister deserves none. The emergency order allows the government to freeze and seize bank accounts without legal recourse. The government is encouraging banks to never do business again with any of the protesters. It allows for the suspension of insurance products and for the seizure of private property. It proposes up to 5 years in jail for people who are advocating for an end to government restrictions. Think about that for a minute. People fighting for the freedom, using their rights as free citizens to criticize government policy could be thrown in jail for up to 5 years. They could have their ability to provide for their families taken away. They could have their mortgages revoked. They could lose their homes. This has nothing to do with public safety and everything to do with punishing those who have dared to speak against government policies. We're sent here to protect the rights of Canadians, not take them away on the flimsiest of excuses or to punish those who embarrass the Prime Minister. There are many who will say good riddance to the protesters, and many who will cheer on their financial ruin. Clearly, while there are many supporting the protests, there are many other Canadians who are disgusted by them. Indeed, many Liberal supporters are cheering on the Prime Minister's strong-arm tactics against our fellow Canadians. They'll point to public opinion polls, showing that people agree with the government's decision to put the boots to those who are embarrassing them on the streets of Ottawa, to put the protesters back in their rightful place, and to serve as a warning to others that there are consequences for daring to question or push back against the government. I will remind this House that many of the darkest chapters in our history, many of the things we look back on in disbelief and shame upon, many of the suspensions of freedoms and liberties that past governments have brought down upon our own people were cheered on by the majority of Canadians and the majority of MPs and were justified in these halls. That doesn't mean they were right. It doesn't mean they were just. And indeed, I believe that if we allow this to stand, there will be a time when a future Prime Minister rises in his place and apologizes for the actions of the current Prime Minister in this case. The Prime Minister's made a purposeful political choice to create the division we see in this country today. This has been confirmed by the Liberal MP for Louis Hébert. Instead of seeking understanding and common ground, the Prime Minister sought political advantage through division. When his pollsters told him he could turn vaccinated Canadians against unvaccinated Canadians, friend against friend, neighbor against neighbor, and family member against family member, he jumped at the chance. He spent the entire election pitting Canadian against Canadian. He called those who disagreed with him racist misogynists who should not be tolerated. He called them a fringe minority with unacceptable views, as if being a Prime Minister or being a Liberal gave him a monopoly on what acceptable views are. He inflamed the situation in Ottawa with his rhetoric and then went into hiding. He continues to divide for partisan advantage. And now he wants this House to simply roll over and allow him to steamroll the rights of Canadians he disagrees with and use a tool he has no justification to use. The use of the Emergencies Act and its order in this case are unjustified. The thresholds have not been met. Its invocation will only serve to further deepen the divisions that have been purposely sown by this Prime Minister. Invoking the Emergencies Act will not resolve a national crisis. Indeed, it may create one. It's time to stop using the powers of government to punish those who have made difficult, unpopular decisions about their own health. It's time to stop going down the Prime Minister's path of division and instead choose the path of healing and reconciliation. And the first step on that path is the rejection of the use of the Emergencies Act against our fellow citizens. We must vote against this motion, and we must instead work together to lower the temperature, give Canadians back their rights, and work together to heal the divisions in our land. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.